Hi, this is Lenny Librizzi, along with Charlie Olson and Mark Latour. Welcome to the Mostly Good Environmental News Report, where we cover positive local and global environmental issues, milestones, and activities that you may not hear about. Very often the news about the environment is not good. We hear about climate chaos in all of its manifestations, like drought, wildfires, floods, and species loss. But there are good things happening in the environment we will share with you in this podcast. We hope you enjoy listening. Today, as we record this episode, is the 1-year anniversary of our first episode going live. Thanks to Charlie, Mark, and Dominique, and to all our listeners and followers for sticking with us. And if any listeners have ideas for stories we should do, please let us know in the comments. For our first good news item, Charlie Olson will tell us about how inexpensive solar is transforming South Africa. Let's hear some good news, Charlie.
All right. In much of the world, solar panels are now so affordable that businesses and families are snapping them up, slashing their bills and challenging utility monopolies. Here's an example. A typical dentist's office in South Africa had serious problems a few years ago. Patients showed up for appointments, only to find out that the power had gone out. No power meant no x-rays, no fillings, no root canals, also no screaming about this either. It was impossible to work. But Africans have found a remedy for power cuts that have plagued people in the developing world for decades. Thanks to swiftly falling prices of Chinese-made solar panels and batteries, they now draw their power from the sun. Today, solar and battery systems are deployed across a variety of businesses. Such businesses as auto factories, farms, wineries, gold mines, and shopping malls. And they are changing everyday life, everyday trade, and everyday industry in Africa's biggest economy. This has happened at a startling speed. Solar has risen from almost nothing in 2019 to 10% of South Africa's electricity generating capacity today. What's happening in South Africa is repeating across the continent. No longer do South Africans depend entirely on giant coal-burning plants that have defined how people worldwide got their electricity for more than a century. That's forcing Eskom, the nation's troubled electric utility, to rethink its business model. The system has been broken for a long time, with the options being unreliable electricity, expensive electricity, or no electricity at all. Over the past decade, while the United States ramped up fossil fuel exports, China focused on renewables. Today, Chinese companies make so many of the world's solar panels, electric vehicles, and batteries that they are slashing prices and scrambling to find buyers. They are finding enormous new markets in Africa, where 600 million people lack reliable electricity. Across the continent, solar imports rise dramatically each year. South Africa was the largest destination for solar imports, but not the only one. Sierra Leone uses solar energy for more than half its electricity, and Chad is coming close to half, while Nigeria and Egypt are ramping up their solar power generation. Chinese companies are also building utility-scale solar farms throughout Africa, and they are bidding up contracts to add nearly 9,000 miles of transmission lines needed to move its increasing supply of solar power around the country. The rapid shift by so many businesses and homes to install their own panels and batteries is causing headaches for Eskom, the already troubled utility. Every kilowatt generated by privately owned solar installations is a hit to its bottom line. Eskom's coal-burning plants, which provide most of South Africa's power, are old and in poor shape. Power cuts have subsided recently, but it wasn't long ago that Eskom had to turn off electricity to some areas for hours at a time, a practice called load shedding. That hurt the economy and fed public anger. During the worst days of load sharing, many households installed solar systems and saw that their monthly energy bill fall by over half. In the past 5 years alone, South African homes and businesses installed solar panels representing more than 1/10 of the country's total installed capacity. The state electric utility has now removed burdensome licensing requirements on private installations, and it has allowed people to sell power into the grid. Eskom is now planning to erect large solar arrays on the grounds of shuttered coal plants. Yay! The utility is shifting its coal-based system to cleaner sources. Unable to beat solar, Eskom is joining solar. Now that is good news for consumers, and that's good news for the environment. How long will it take the rest of the world to follow their example and do the same? Now, Lenny is going to talk about how Long Island Sound is the cleanest it has been in many, many years.
Yes, Charlie. The good news is that Long Island Sound is the cleanest it has been in many years. I am being a bit of a homer here, as I have lived near and have been on Long Island Sound. I once slept on the rocky beach at Orient Point, the easternmost point of Long Island Sound. For those of you who haven't experienced it, Long Island Sound is a 1,300 square mile tidal estuary stretching 113 miles between Connecticut and Long Island, New York, serving as a vital ecosystem for over 120 fish species. It is 350 feet deep at certain points and features a diverse habitat, supports 30,000 to 50,000 boats daily, and impacts over 20 million people in its watershed. The western end borders the New York City boroughs of the Bronx and Queens. 3 of Connecticut's largest cities, Bridgeport, New Haven, and New London, are on the Sound's northern border. With all of this human activity, a major problem has long been dissolved oxygen levels. For plants and marine species to survive, they need oxygen in the water. Sewage plants, power plants, and other human activities increase the levels of nitrogen in the water and deplete the oxygen supply, creating dead zones. In fact, during the summer of 1995, the 400 square miles of Long Island Sound suffered from hypoxia, or very low levels of dissolved oxygen. A concerted effort by the U.S. EPA, New York State, Connecticut, and local advocacy groups has improved the water quality to the point where, in 2025, only 18 square miles are now labeled as dead zones. That's down from 400. And that's the lowest number of square miles since monitoring began in 1987. Upgrading sewage treatment plants has had the greatest effect. Nitrogen pollution is a worldwide problem and is often caused by agricultural runoff, as is the case in the Gulf of Mexico and Chesapeake Bay. There is less agriculture around Long Island Sound, which is why upgrading sewage treatment plants made such a big difference. There is still that 18 square miles, which may be harder and take longer to clean up, and there is the problem of climate change. Warmer water holds less oxygen, so the work must continue. But the progress that has been made thus far through cooperative efforts is good news for the environment. And now Mark will share some short snippets of good environmental news. Mark?
The landmark achievement for the Texas coast, the International Crane Foundation and the Conservation Fund have secured permanent protection for more than 3,300 acres of wintering habitat for the federally endangered whooping crane. Situated along the Gulf Coast near Corpus Christi, the lands lie in one of the most important landscapes for wetland and grassland dependent species in North America. These properties safeguard essential foraging and roosting grounds used by the wood buffalo whooping crane population, the only wild self-sustaining flock in existence. Once reduced to a mere handful, the population has rebounded to 500 birds, thanks to decades of conservation. The landscape is also home to the endangered black rail, the Aplomado falcon, and other declining species of shorebirds and waterfowl. The milestone is backed by 2 land acquisitions. In December, the International Crane Foundation took ownership of a 1,150-acre coastal property. The group will build its Central Flyway Research and Restoration Program here. Also in December, the Conservation Fund acquired a 2,200-acre ranch to prevent development and to protect habitat. The 2 properties lie within a broader mosaic that includes 150,000 acres made up of the state's Powderhorn Wildlife Reserve, Welder Flats Wildlife Preserve, Aransas Wildlife Refuge, and several privately conserved lands. This strengthens ecological connectivity, enhancing resilience against coastal development, pressures, sea level rise, and habitat loss. Large, intact coastal landscapes are disappearing fast, and protecting this area is a big win for wetlands. Conservation of these properties will serve as a stopover for birds migrating over the Gulf and will be a nursery for juvenile sport fishing and commercial fish species. The Washoe tribe has purchased more than 10,000 acres of land for conservation in one of the largest tribal land returns in California history. The property, north of Lake Tahoe, stretches from the Great Basin through the Sierra Nevadas and includes sagebrush scrublands plus juniper and pine forests. The tribe worked with the Northern Sierra Partnership and the Feather River Land Trust on the project and used a grant from the California Wildlife Conservation Board to support the purchase. The land back movement in California has seen thousands of acres sold back to tribes that occupied the land for millennia. Last June, the Yurok tribe acquired 47,000 acres near the lower Klamath River, and the Tule River tribe regained 14,000 acres of ancestral lands last year. The preserve is an important habitat for wildlife, including pronghorn, mule deer, and gray wolves, and has springs and key water resources. Conservation Fund, a nonprofit group, announced new protections for 10,000 acres of woodland in the Florida Panhandle near Port St. Joe. This will help the federally threatened wood stork and the Florida manatee, which migrates through the adjacent intracoastal waterway. News of the deal, which will support healthy forests and water quality in Apalachicola Bay, comes as the Florida Fish and Wildlife Commission opens the bay for wild oyster harvesting for the first time in 5 years. Saving the Lake Wamiko forest is a win for Florida's environment and way of life. The forests provide myriad benefits, including water quality, soil health, wildlife habitat, local jobs, and economic vitality. The site was at risk of being broken up and developed, and this would have threatened the bay. The project received support from the Florida Department of Environmental Protection, which will hold the conservation easement in perpetuity. The Conservation Fund has helped save more than 200,000 acres of at-risk woodlands, wetlands, and grasslands in Florida. Recent actions of the fund include protecting sea turtle habitat in southeast Florida and working to protect the headwaters of the Loxahatchee and St. Lucie rivers. So if you like this work and want to donate to the Conservation Fund, check out their website, www.conservationfund.org. And finally, homeowners associations, HOAs, are common throughout the country with condominium owners and with neighborhood groups of single-family homeowners. Many of these HOAs are going green. For example, a large homeowners association near Dallas, Texas, recently earned the National Wildlife Federation's Wildlife Habitat certification. They switched to native plantings in 9 parks and 20 common areas, converted 4 acres to native pollinator-friendly wildflowers and grasses, planted native trees, and installed dark sky public lighting. Volunteers with the HOA's Green Club do the work to support urban wildlife and pollinators. So if you're a member of a homeowners association, consider reaching out to the National Wildlife Federation to get help on going green and on obtaining your community wildlife habitat certification. And now, Lenny, back to you.
Thanks, Mark. And thank you for listening to the Mostly Good Environmental News Report. We hope you enjoyed hearing some good news. If you like what you heard, please share with your friends and listen to more episodes of the Mostly Good Environmental News Report wherever you listen to podcasts. We can be found on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube, iHeartRadio, and Amazon Podcasts. A special thank you to Fred Duca for the original music compositions we are using in this podcast. Here is a little bit of that music.